Welcome to the Anti-Architect Podcast. I am your host, Christian Giordano. As president and owner of the design firm Mancini Duffy, I am driven by a quest for learning and radically changing the industry. With this podcast, I'm hoping to improve the industry that I'm so passionate about by taking a critical look at how architects work through a variety of voices and shared experiences. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to be my guest here on the Anti-Architect Podcast.
My pleasure.
So, I've known you for a long time.
Yep.
Figured we'd start with when you and I first met on our first Wonder project. And for the audience,
Good time.
Wonder is a food delivery service, or really a curate chefs from celebrity chefs from around the country. They put together these amazing food packages. You order it on an app, and then you now go and pick up the meal.
Yep.
Very revolutionary company and a mutual client of ours. Mm-hmm. But we met at the first project when we were building their cooking commissary. And I like the way you tell the story about our principal and director on the project, Michael Kipfer.
Yeah, Kip.
Yeah, so tell us what you told Kip the day you walked in to rescue that project.
So I had the privilege of getting involved in the Wonder account right over the holidays. We had been trying to step in with a couple of subs calling us saying, hey, these guys could use someone to kind of steer this in the right direction. Their commissary is behind schedule. There's a couple coordination issues with the GC that they had on project at the time. And it was late December when the project team sent me the drawings and said, hey, take a look at these and then hey, maybe you can help consult. And I said, you're probably going to call me and tell me to come in and, work on this, shotgun fashion. They said, no, we wouldn't do that. We have everything lined up. We just might need a couple extra eyes and ears. January 4th, Monday after New Year's, I get a call from the in-house project team, and they said, hey, when can you come in? I said, I can come in and meet with you, tomorrow. And they said, no, we don't need you to meet. We need you to come in with the project team and take it over. I said, okay. By that Friday, we had a meeting with the CEO, and I was given a deadline of March 31st to complete the 30+ thousand square foot commissary and new headquarter office on top of that. And so a couple weeks in, after taking out architectural elements and all these pretty things that Mancini put into this disruptive company's first location, Michael Kipfer walked on the site and he said, whoa, wait a second. That's not, those are supposed to be arched. Those are supposed to be, oriented this way. I said, we're not doing that. He goes, yeah, but we need to. I said, no, we're not. And he goes, why? I said, because I got to get this thing done by March 31st and they need to cook food, and what it looks like, I don't really care. He didn't love that. But I think we found a mutual understanding. Okay, we have to deliver a certain quality of a project. Yeah. But it had to be focused around the owner's program and their ability to deliver on the product first. And that's kind of where we always come from is, right? Everyone talks about scope, schedule, budget, and the way that you can push and pull certain things. And for us, it was really important to focus on delivering a CGMP qualified kitchen, TCO on time, and resolving all of the other MEP related issues that were left over from the prior contractor. And Kip was honestly, he got on board with it, and he was a huge help in making on-the-fly decisions, in-field RFI responses, sketches, and we worked really closely together. And then after, I gave him agita for probably 3.5 months, he came to me and was like, I really hated the way this project went. But I think you would get along with the owner of our company really well, so we should get together. And that's how you and I met. That's how we met. He put together that dinner, and I thought you would never want to talk to me again. So I felt pretty lucky that after butchering his design, he saw the value in it and got us together.
But at the end of the day, I think we all were proud of that project because it may not have had the little design details that we had, but overall it came out great, and it jump-started that company, and now they're delivering meals and opening restaurants sort of everywhere.
Yeah, at an incredible pace. And I think, I think we were able to deliver the look and feel in the front of house. Yeah. And I think that has continued with the rollout of their brick and mortar restaurants and distribution centers. we're able to now work with you guys and their in-house team and deliver a beautiful product on every project. And I think that early, often, approach towards questioning design, constructability, field conditions, and working with them in that capacity, we don't have to run into the situation of sacrificing one for the other.
Right. So that translates great into my architecture question. So
what question would that be?
If you had to pick one thing, what annoys you about, in your case, working with architects?
Only one.
You can list many.
No. And I think this doesn't just relate to architects, but I do think it's relevant to them as a design focus. I think architects they come from the world of construction and development being led by architecture. And I think that's changed in the modern landscape where contractors are expected to bring a certain amount of knowledge with constructability, budget, schedule management, right? Owners have different programs and different requirements. And architects are a really important part of that. But I think that when you have architects that go by the old school way of saying, no, everything runs through me and it's my way or the highway, I don't know that it's the best thing for the client. I think when you have people that are, in charge and take an imperious approach to, well, it's my design. When I hear that, I'm like, well, not really, right? It's your effort to create the client's vision, right? And so that's why, you guys aren't like that, right? That's, I think, why we hit it off, because when we get involved in projects, and we've done several together, both bid build and design build, we come to the table and go, okay, what are we trying to solve? What are we trying to deliver to the client, right? Or with the client, what are we trying to deliver to the market? So some architects still don't do that.
Yeah.
And that's tough. But that would be the main thing, right? Not having somebody who's able to be a team player, but only thinks of themselves as a leader.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah. And so you are really a design build contractor, and more or as much as just a CM or a contractor. And I think that kind of puts you in a different realm. What do you look for when, hiring the design side of the design build?
If I can, I would steer that a little bit. So where I come from, right? When I got involved in the business, I worked for a guy named Gary Fleming, and he didn't start this company because he was a contractor his whole life. He started the company actually because he was involved specifically in the industrial side in material handling systems, design and sales. And more often than not, he would be asked to stay on as an owner's rep and project manager to oversee construction, oversee design, and make sure that the end goal of the client and their operation was the focus, and that the building was designed and constructed around that. And so that kind of shaped my way of looking at projects, because I started in the world of working mostly with owner-operators and smaller companies where their needs were really, really specific, right? It wasn't spec development or spec build. It was building to the needs of an operation. And so we approach every project with, what kind of problem are we looking to solve for the client, and how can we deliver that through intelligent design and construction? Because, again, someone might want to have the most beautiful project at the end of the day, or the most impressive office or manufacturing facility, but they also have budget constraints. They also have to deliver on a certain schedule. They might have end users or clients that they promise delivery dates to, right? And those are the things in my mind that need to drive the project more than the aesthetic or, the look of the finished product. So Sure. When we look for design teams, we look for people that are going to be part of a team that can bring expertise and value to defining the operation for the finished product much faster. We don't need it to be an exercise in kind of learning on the job. We need it to be, multiple disciplines coming to the table and bringing their expertise and quickly getting to resolution on what does the right finished product and program look like.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess would you ever also have the truly in-house designers and architects as part of your company at one point? Is that the vision for it?
We have licensed architects and licensed civil engineers in-house, but not for the intent of replacing the design team, but really for being able to communicate effectively between our construction team, design team, and looking at it from our side of the table, but with the knowledge of what it takes from your side to be able to deliver.
Let's talk a little bit about architects and budgets and trying to wrap our head around that, right? Where do architects go wrong? How can we do a better job of engaging a contractor or someone like yourself that can help us with that process, right? Where I always say architects don't know how much anything costs, or we're only as good as the last project that we worked on.
There's the what do we do today? And then what could the future be? I think the way, and correct me if I'm wrong because this is your expertise, but I think the way it really works for you guys is you get to the point where you know you need to design something. And sure, when it comes to approach to structure, right, approach to building envelope, it's what works from a code perspective and what consultants do we bring in to resolve that. When it comes to material selections, equipment selections, finishes, a lot of that's driven by the sales cycle of manufacturers and suppliers, right? And so people walk into your office and do a presentation for you and say, we're going to make your design approach so much better because we have all of these off-the-shelf products that you can package into your design immediately.
Yep.
But that information doesn't come with cost, lead time, performance, right? It comes with, it meets this intent for the design. And when you need, when a mechanical engineer needs to size systems for a building, they'll go to a Train or they'll go to a Carrier, they'll go to, a Daikin or one of the other manufacturers or one of their suppliers and say, hey, help us figure this out. Same thing with lighting.
Yeah.
Right? You guys need to hit lighting levels. You want to hit certain architectural elements. And then a lighting supplier or designer is saying, okay, use these. Mm-hmm. Right? But they're not doing that with the question of what's your budget that you need to hit? Where does this fit in the overall project? And so I think if we were able to walk into a job and, at a 30%, right, SD set, right, schematic development, say, okay, we know the space that we're working with. We know what we want to get out of it. Let's start getting into the, early takeoffs and unit pricing that we can try to then guide ourselves to. And then work together with, an architecture team or a design team, a contractor, and an owner in a more integrated process. You can talk about, and we've done this before, right?
Yeah.
With other projects that had strict timelines and limited budgets. What do we need to accomplish? What are the options on the table? Be involved in the conversation and pull that information from the supplier and incorporate that into a budget and a schedule early and make decisions then. Okay, no, we can't spend that much on lighting because we would rather spend that on, extra capacity for electricity for our manufacturing floor. Great. That is, I think, what we can do today early. And I think that, oftentimes people are like, well, I'm not working on that job. So until I'm engaged, not involved, you can call me and say, hey, can you take a look at something, put a budget together for it? My client needs to know it's going to work.
All right.
And you actually ask that question before you move forward with design, which is awesome. And
we get burned on it all the time if we don't.
Yeah, no client appreciates you meeting all of their desires, but not their budget.
Yeah, and then turning around and say, oh yeah, by the way, you can't afford any of this. We're going to start over.
Here's everything you want, now you can't have it.
Right.
I think that you guys do a really good job of that, and I think the industry, in general, needs to try to work together to provide services and support where they can to one another, not because they're getting paid to do it, but because it's going to show the value that they add and create. But that's what we could do today. I think what we could do in the future, and we're not far off from it, and you guys are kind of on the leading edge of this, is utilize BIM, right, and modeling to do a lot of that for us. Why is it that you get product information and Revit models from suppliers that don't come with that kind of information built into the metadata?
It's crazy.
There's scheduled slots for it, right?
Yeah.
There's ways to package in budget information, schedule information.
You're right. There are actual fields in there that could all be filled in. Yeah. But it's not.
And you get them and they're naked.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I do want that information. Okay, who's going to put that in? Who owns that? Who's in control of that? And also, how is it live, right? You could get an object sent to you today and the information, it could be out of date in 2 weeks. How do we get ahead of that, right?
Yeah.
And how do we get suppliers and people who are modeling these objects to create kind of a live, interface or universe that continuously updates that information, so you could be living in real time of, okay, as we're developing this, we're seeing the price on this stuff going up. So let's be aware of that. Okay, the lead times are going out.
That'd be amazing. And there is no reason why a BIM model couldn't give you some sort of even bill of materials and some scope of cost at the end of the day. It won't have installation, but it'll have something.
Right. Or that's the part that we come to you and say, hey, we need to add another field for installation costs, and here's our unit sheet that we use for our estimating for that.
How important do you think it is for architects to have actual field experience, like being out there, seeing how it works?
Tremendous. There's always the awesome notes that you guys put on paper, like contractor to verify, contractor to coordinate, VIF, right? Verify the field.
Yeah, that's a good one. We use that all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And look, it is our job as a contractor to be in control of that. But when you're in the process of bidding a project and trying to qualify yourself for it, you have 2 to 4 weeks to work with the subcontractors and suppliers to get pricing, to review the drawings, develop a preliminary schedule, develop your marketing and qualifications packages for the project while running a business, right? It's not realistic after a design is 100% baked for us to capture every constructability issue on paper, because we get PDF copies of 2D plans prior to going to construction. And, depending on the sector you're in, a lot of people don't want to, right? We do our best to catch constructability issues or value engineering opportunities early in the bid process. We can get into the how and why, but unfortunately our tax dollars don't afford that, right? It's the low bid. Go in with, only what you have to that's on paper. Don't think about how to build the job. RFI it later and then change order it and balloon the job and make up for what you cut out in the beginning. I hate that concept, right? We don't make our money on change orders. And everyone thinks that contractors do. There are the subs, right? They have higher markups or ability to bury things just because, the number of tiers between the owner seeing it and their actual cost accounting. But for the GC CM world, that's not where we make our money. We make our money on delivering a good project on time, on schedule, within budget, and then moving on to a repeat customer relationship.
Yeah, everybody thinks the contractor wants to draw out the job for whatever reason. Oh, the contractor loves taking so long. And I always try to defend and say, no, the contractor would like to be done as soon as possible. Like everything buttoned up and get out. Yeah. Same with us on the architecture side, and same with us on change orders. We stink at giving change orders to clients, right? Where in ours it's work authorizations, right? Because by the time we've gotten to that level of a work authorization, I'm so about the relationship with the client that I don't want to ask for more money. But if we've gotten to that point and now I'm asking for more money, it means I probably should have asked 6 months earlier. Right. I'm probably already out of scope. I'm probably already into a totally different design. Yep. And there's never that level of communication there. And that's where we get killed too.
And I think, look, we work with similar clients in terms of where they sit in the hierarchy of a project, right? We all know developers and operators who take the risk on doing a project are the ones covering all of the costs at the end of the day. And a lot of times for them to feel like you're on the team, they want you to share in that, that pain, right? But not always the outcome, right? And that's something tough, but it's also something we're bridging. A lot of people that we work with, kind of comment, well, you guys don't always sound like contractors, you sound like developers. Right, because we want to look at this from your perspective from day one. We want to avoid that uncomfortable conversation of why didn't we have that cost anticipated? We try to take the lessons learned from projects and say, hey, so if it goes this way, we should have an allowance for what we're going to do with that, right? And we try to anticipate as much of that as possible.
And so speaking of that, G. Williams Group is a construction management and consulting based a consulting firm based in Edison, New Jersey. You guys were founded in 2003 by Gary William Fleming, as you said before.
Yep.
You guys specialize in commercial real estate development, obviously design, build, construction management, owners reps, and across a large variety of building types, right? Everything from industrial, manufacturing. We talked about restaurants. I know you do education, sports facilities, food processing. We talked about. I'm sure there's others. So you started at GWG as an intern.
Yes.
Worked your way up through project manager, vice president, then becoming managing partner. What was the turning point in there where you knew as an intern, wait a minute, I better stay here? And how the hell did you become the owner of it?
I wish I could tell you that it was, this 19-year-old strategic initiative of mine, but it wasn't. I stayed because I liked what I was doing, right? So I was in college and living with my rugby teammates, and one of them, Jason Krause, was my best friend. We worked together for a while, and he actually does a lot of our recruiting placement now. Jason looked at me and tossed me a beer, and he's like, "What are you doing this summer?" And I was probably going to go work at Seashore Day Camp, which is now a bunch of condos over on Ocean Ave. But I was going to go back to Seashore Day Camp and, hang out with my buddies, and we ran jet skis at the beach, pulling banana boats for the kids, and it was like the perfect summer. He goes, "Well, you're an engineer, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Aren't you guys supposed to get internships?" Yeah, I mumbled a bunch of profanities under my breath. And then I immediately took out my laptop and went on monster.com and tried to find an internship. And so I reached out to a few people with simple emails. Didn't have a fully baked CV or resume at the time. And I got a call within like 20 minutes. Right? It was Gary. And from that call, he was just like, "Look, that was a simple, straightforward email." He's like, "Unfortunately, looking for engineers, I don't get a lot of those." He's like, "But I'd love to have a conversation with you and just see what you could do this summer for us." Went in, found out us was him. He was a one-man show. He was running one or two projects at a time as an owner's rep. And after a 2-hour, interview, which really became a conversation just like this, he looked at me and said, "You know what? Your desk is over there if you want it." And I said, "Great. Love to take it." And so, combination of opportunistic and lazy. I just, being honest, I got the A's on tests and the D's on homework. That kid in college. He gave me that opportunity. He took me to a project. We were meeting a client in their existing facility in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I mean, in 2008, Williamsburg was being bought up left and right.
Yeah.
This was one of the older 4-story, brick and concrete buildings that were there. You'll know where we took them because you guys designed it. We were meeting with them to talk about consolidating. So they were a global spring manufacturing company. We were talking about consolidating 100,000 square feet they had in Brooklyn across 4 floors to 33,000 square feet in the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and then helping them reallocate certain operations to other parts, plant in Mexico, one in Canada, right, and focusing on this being more of a corporate headquarters and specialized production. Sat at a table like this, I was here, Gary's there, CEO's at the end, president's next to me, and engineering and finance are on the other side of the table. Architect is standing over everybody presenting the plan they've been working on for 6 months. Talking about like entry points for people. And I was like, aren't you going to have a conflict here with your fork truck traffic, door swing, and personnel? And he paused. President of the company looks at me and goes, "Who the fuck are you?" And I was like, I'm Gary's intern. And the CEO goes, "Oh, point that again." They pulled in the head of EH&S and the head of production. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, we can't do that." And the architect looked at me across the table and he was like, so I had a really, really fun rest of the meeting, being the bad guy, pointing out things that I just didn't make sense to me for the first time looking at the plan. And I think that's important, right? When you look at something for the first time, it's not your writing.
Yeah.
Right. So you can be a better editor.
Absolutely.
When you try to edit your own work, a lot of times it's like, no, I know what I did. So
you don't see your own mistakes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I had that benefit, and it kind of taught me a lesson out of the gate, right? Be open to other people critiquing your work. It's only going to make you better. And so anyway, we get in the car on the way back. We're going through Staten Island when 278 was under heavy construction. So in 3 hours of traffic coming back from Brooklyn Army Terminal. Is my second week of work. And Gary looks over at me and goes, so you like to open your mouth, huh? And I go, shit, I'm going to get fired in my second week. He goes, no, it's great. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause any problems. I hope the client's not mad. He goes, no, it's fantastic. He's like, you found something that would have been a problem later. So now you're going to run the project. He goes, yeah, you'll be the PM this summer. It's like, oh, okay. And I got lucky. It went really well. I had a lot of fun working on the project. The client was happy. They've actually, became a repeat client, came back to us for some other work 10 years later. But I got through that summer, and at the end of it, Gary said, hey, look, this was great. If you want to come back, you have a place here next summer. And because I was kind of lazy, I never looked for another job.
I love the lazy theme.
You know what? I worked my ass off when it came to delivering on the project. But when it came to like, okay, how do I want to shape my career? I wasn't really thinking about that. It was more important for me to just, I committed to doing something. Let me focus on doing it and enjoying it. I didn't put all this pressure on myself to think about like, what would my career look like if I went and worked at a larger firm or, created a pedigree resume before I got out of college. And he offered me a full-time opportunity for when I graduated, took that too, and came on board and started, running PM work. And the benefit of being in a small space, small firm, well, 2-people firm, was everything he went to, I went to. So planning board meetings, planning and design meetings with clients, sales meetings with new prospects. And I found myself talking a lot at the table, like I am now, and running a lot of the sales meetings as someone with 3 months of experience out of college. It was a little bit of like that scene out of Boiler Room, right? Act as if.
But maybe in your case, having worked with you and know you now for a while, you're a really fast learner. I will say, like you've gone from project manager to construction. Like you really know it. Means and methods. The technical aspects of it. And you learn this all on the job with him?
It wasn't really on the job with him. Honestly, it was with the subs.
Okay.
Right. It was with the subs, with the engineers, with the architects. What I said I don't love about the conventional role of an architect is exactly what I learned not to do when I came into the industry. So the first job I was ever on, Weber Scientific, it was a building expansion in Hamilton, New Jersey. Right. And then simultaneously worked on food commissary for Mamoons, and then ended up working on another food commissary for another company in Middlesex County. As ridiculous as it may have been to the sub at the time, I looked at, I did structural engineering and civil engineering in school. Mm-hmm. I drew footings and columns and, rebar layouts, and I, designed concrete mixes, but I hadn't touched rebar, I hadn't touched concrete. I didn't actually know, the means and methods of forming, trenching, shoring, et cetera. And so when I got on the job, I was this curious sponge. And I actually remember asking the owner of Prestige Concrete, I hope he doesn't mind me throwing him out there, but I'm watching him run his crew, and a guy wasn't moving fast enough in the machine. He pulled him out of the machine and jumped him himself. And I hopped up on the tracks, I knocked on the window, and I'm like, Billy. He's like, what? What do you want? I said, can I get in the hole with the guys? He goes, you can get in the hole, but if you get in the way, I'm knocking you out of the hole. Okay, cool. And they threw me a set of waders, and I got in there with them and was working in the hole on concrete and understanding the placement. And then they're pointing out like, hey, on the design, it shows this kind of spacing, but it doesn't work because you don't have enough cover on the outside. And, these are all things that I should have learned in school, but I didn't, right? I didn't have the practical experience. But I wasn't afraid to ask questions and be the guy that didn't know. I was the project manager, but I didn't know the trades. And so I just asked a lot of questions and trusted the guys that really know. And, some people tell you things that at face value, but they might not be right. Mm-hmm. But you ask enough times to enough people and you start to kind of get, okay, what's the general consensus of best practice from these experts? And I started to learn, not how can I do this, but who can I call that can be my subject matter expert and help me along the way. And then in exchange, how can I get them work and, provide them livelihood for being that subject matter expert. And that became the trade-off, right? How can you teach me? What can I learn from you? And then how can I get you work because you helped me learn something and, know where to apply it?
Where's Gary now, and how did you become the owner?
So early in my career, Gary, I think, saw some value in me, and I stepped up to take on a lot of like the day-to-day workload. And I started also building a book, right? I took an interest in going and meeting architects and engineers and consultants. And one of our first large projects, Michael Testa, an architect based out of Manalapan, called me and introduced me to a group that was building Sportic at the time, 170,000 square foot sports and recreation complex. I loved that process of, being the guy that somebody called, hey, can you help this client of mine? Great. Let me meet them. Let me learn what they're trying to do. And as I was bringing in business now, Gary said, hey, I'd like to make you a partner.
And how old were you?
I was 23 when he offered it.
Yeah. Eric's super young, just so everybody knows.
I called the smartest guy that I know. It was my dad when it came to business. And I said, Dad, Gary wants to make me a partner. He goes, cool, how much? I was like, 20%. He's like, awesome. Tell me about what the company's doing. Give me numbers on revenue, growth, history. And at the end of the conversation, he goes, yeah, just tell me you want to raise. I was like, what? I could be a partner. And he's like, right, tell me you want to raise. He goes, we call that golden handcuffs. He's like, the company isn't established enough for you to really be getting any value yet. Mm-hmm. Keep building the company because right now it's not going to keep growing without you. So make sure you get paid, make sure that you get taken care of, make sure you see the direction of the company, you know that you can continue to grow it before you lock yourself in because right now you're growing something that was one guy. You don't know whether or not you have the resources or the knowledge to grow something into what it could be. And it was great advice because I saw, a shiny object and he was like, yeah, don't do that. Fast forward 2 years, we take on a couple larger projects. We're starting to develop a company. I brought on, an admin and accounting person. I brought on an estimator, project manager, supers, and we're starting to build an actual business as opposed to being, entrepreneurs and operators. I went back to my dad. I'm like, I think I want to revisit the partnership conversation. He goes, absolutely. 50-50, you're managing partner. I was like, how do I ask for that? He goes, ask for it. He goes, are you going to make it more valuable for him? I said, well, yeah, I've been doing that. He goes, right. So ask. I took Gary out to lunch over an appetizer. I said, so I want to talk to you about the business. I'm bringing on this project. And, previously we've been doing consulting type revenue and it was bringing in the first $10 million at-risk construction project. And I proposed exactly what I talked to my dad about. And Gary looked at me and goes, okay. It was that simple. And I mean, he was a friend. He was a mentor and he was somebody that saw the value. And he was in a later part of his career as well.
Okay.
Right? And so I think it was a mutually beneficial situation. I got really, really lucky. I had that aptitude to learn. I had the desire to, but I also had somebody that told me, no, you're going to take this risk, right? I didn't have to sit there and go, I'm going to take this risk on my own. He wanted to throw me into the fire. He trusted that I could handle it. He created a lot of self-value and belief that I might not have otherwise had if someone didn't see that and say, no, I want you to be in that position. So up until the day where we consummated a full buyout, Gary would walk into a room and be like, this is my partner, Eric, and he's going to do the right thing. When someone sees you that way, talks about you that way, presents you that way, you really don't have a choice, right? At that point, you're like, all right, I have to live up to this. Yeah. I have to live up to this image that he's created for me. And it was an honor. Fast forward, we had grown the business. Now it was probably from the time that, I made partner with him, we'd grown it about 4X, staffed up. It was 2018, 2019, we started having conversations. Okay, what's like the succession plan, right? Gary's in his early 70s. And I wanted to know, that I was eventually going to be able to earn out, right, the balance of the equity and take over the business. And that was a hard time in our relationship because he built up my ego so much over time. I realize it now. I didn't realize it then because I was in that age range of being like very focused on myself and what I was trying to do. Having the conversation around buying him out and taking over 100% started to diminish his ego and his sense of self-worth, right? Even though I think if he had seen this growth earlier and, it felt like his plan, it would have felt good, but it was my plan, right? And my desire to keep growing and my hunger. It became a little contentious, not because I wanted to do the wrong thing, but because he was like, well, why would I leave? Well, we're getting to the point where, I want you to be able to enjoy, and you're coming in at 11, you're leaving at 3. I need to be able to make room for people that are going to help us get to the next stage of the business. There were the conversations of now, I built this company. Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm going to leave and we're going to come back and we're going to start this conversation over. And it was do I need to start my own thing? And then you can have the company you started. Right. And it's terrible when you go through that with a friend and a partner. But ultimately, we took enough time away from that conversation, and then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, it was very interesting to be able to be bought out, because when things were going great, it was like, well, why would I go? You're just going to keep growing the company. My value is going to keep going up. And then when reality hit and the market shifted and, the way people behaved and fear set in, I think that he realized, like, wait, it's been going great. I have the opportunity to leave while it's great, and it might not always be great. And as it gets bigger, the risk gets bigger. And so then we came to the conclusion of doing a structured buyout. And in June of 21, we signed the paper, and Gary had the chance to retire and move on. And, a lot of people ask me, okay, are you going to change the name?
I think I've asked you that.
Look, one day it might happen, but to me, it wasn't about the name of the business.
Right.
Right. I mean, Mancini.
Yeah.
Your name's not Christian Mancini, right?
Exactly.
So it was no longer about, for me, like my name being out there, right? It's actually the thing I've been working the hardest to stop, is it being about me.
I love that a lot. Yeah, I agree. It's got to be bigger.
Right. It's got to be about what the company can do, the people can do, the culture can do. And I love being at the helm of it.
So now you've grown the company, obviously, and since then it's grown substantially as well. Mm-hmm. How do you maintain the culture? How do you hire the right people? You have some amazing people that work with you now.
Thank you.
So how do you maintain that as you grow?
So one of the things that I've been doing is, let's only take a step back. So part of like that real catalytic growth phase for me was actually a couple of really good friends of mine that I hired. People that I trust in a foxhole that knew nothing about construction, nothing about architecture and engineering. And when they were like, hey, I kind of want to go for a career change, I said, cool, you want to come in the office on Monday? And they're like, well, is there a job? And I was like, no, but I'll make one. And it was wildly risky because we didn't really have the cash flow and the bandwidth to like just, invest in R&D of, new roles. But investing in people that I could trust and people that trusted me and making that a big part of the culture and the values, right? That made a lot of sense, even if it wasn't a technically savvy move. Jason, who worked for me for a long time, who's kind of like HR and business development, now does a lot of our recruiting, right? And helps me identify people that he knows is going to fit into the same mold. I was lucky enough to build kind of a core of people, and it changed over time, right? I had some people that were great leaders for where we were in the company growth, and I wasn't the best leader at the time. It was a lot more, again, when I was younger, it was a lot more about what I could do and like trying to get people to emulate what I thought was the right approach, not trusting them and giving them that.
So wise in your old age now.
You get punched in the mouth a couple times by reality, and if you don't learn from it, you're just going to keep getting punched. I do now have a really strong core of people in our company, and we've shifted positions and focuses, and some of them have taken sideways moves within the company, but in order for it to become bigger, their roles have actually helped increase the amount of construction and revenue that they're overseeing because they're specializing and focusing as the company's expanding, right? The Wonder account, Chris, right? He stepped in to build the entire Wonder account, which is now going to become a national platform for us. And so working with them and creating that trust and making those moves and not having it be about the ego of the position has been huge.
Speaking of Chris, I've seen him manage a project and then also get on a ladder and build something or,
No, we don't
underneath
do that.
something. I mean,
Our insurance company would never agree to do that.
he's on it too. He's managing it, and if he's got to jump in and build something, he will too. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Again, that's what we strive for, right? We have people on our team. Some people are first responders. Some people are Boy Scout, leaders. Some people came from carpentry or sat in machines. So they have firsthand knowledge, and we encourage them to use that. We're not suit and tie kind of guys, but even when we are wearing, the suit, one of my guys went to a field walk for a large client the other day. Can we get on the roof? He's in a suit, and he's like, yeah, sure. Let's go.
Oh yeah. I've had to do that too.
I'm sure you have. There's nothing beneath us. And that's not me. That's really being led by the people that we have on our team.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You got into a lot of it there in terms of the career side, but growing up, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And I know you're a big sports guy. What was that underwater basket weaving you did?
So grew up, born and raised in Whitestone, Queens, and then moved quickly, into Monmouth County. We moved around a few times, but eventually when I was in the 5th grade, landed in Little Silver. Cute little trite story of how I got back there with my wife who grew up in Little Silver. Went to Red Bank Regional High School, really loved, the math and science and physics and all the stuff like that kind of just came naturally. English and writing and grammar, not as much so, not until later in life where I was like, I do need to be able to communicate with people. This is important. Went to University of Maryland, was convinced to join the rugby team. It was a club team, but we were, I think at the time I joined, it was like number 9 in the country. And there was a lot of guys who were really serious about it. And it became a great culture of you're on the field, you're beating the hell out of each other. Guys are taking swings and scrum, like, breaking noses. And then you host each other at your house afterwards, and you throw a barbecue and a party, and you give them food and drink. And that sense of like, we can go to war together, but also have this camaraderie afterwards. We never lost that.
That's awesome.
Right. And a lot of the guys that I brought on were actually on my rugby team or hung out around them. And it was really, really cool. Fast forward through school. So I got my civil engineering degree. I'd already been working with Gary, came on full time, moved to Long Branch, got an apartment there. Lived there with a friend and then another one who now actually works with us as well.
Of course.
Just came on.
If I ever need a job, I'm coming to you.
Vice versa, man. Vice versa. And you'd be welcome.
Awesome. I want to be in the field, though. I want to be in those boots.
Yeah, I bet.
With that concrete.
Those would be the cleanest boots I've ever seen. Lived in Long Branch, and then Jen and I had our first son, Robert, and he was 1 year old. He was a 1-year-old. And we've been looking for a place to live. And we wanted to stay in Monmouth County. Both of our families are here. We drove past a 1903 farmhouse that had a little for sale by owner sign in the front. And I backed up in the middle of Branch Avenue, pulled in, and turned out to be...
Probably should have kept going.
Oh, God, you love this story. It has definitely become a...
Yeah, we've been trying to help Eric renovate that house now for, I don't know, it's probably been 4 years.
A year of coming up with ideas and concepts, and then
changing our minds.
Listening to you after many rounds of not, and then going through a pretty for having done this for a living for 15 years.
Oh, your own stuff's the worst.
This is so hard. I look at clients all the time like, why can't you make this decision? The facts are right in front of you. And then I'm sitting at home at my kitchen table looking at the plans that we have. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I should change it.
Let's talk a little bit about technology in the future.
No. I want to tell you about my family.
All right. Please do.
You got to tell you, I got 3 kids.
That's right. Yeah. You're
beautiful wife.
That's right. You're only on one. You're only on kid 1.
Yeah. I only tell you kid 1. But this part can be a little quicker. So, Robbie's now 8. We have Lucas, who's 5.5, and James, who's 2. They've gotten bigger, each child, and are helping with early demolition of the house.
Nice.
Lucas just threw something through a window the other day. It was a plastic ninja star, and he's apparently got a really good arm. But I just wanted to make sure I shouted them out.
That's awesome. So switching gears to a little bit of technology and the future. How do you at GWG use technology? Where do you see things like AI fitting in? And how do you think that architects and contractors can keep up with all this?
simple technology utilization, right? We have everything we do is on Microsoft Office 365 and Procore. They're all fully integrated. We have automated workflows for a lot of our processes so that we keep people on the rails. We utilize OpenSpace, which is integrated into Procore for 3D walkthroughs, kind of like what you do with Matterport, but
Right.
a little less focused on the dimensioning, more focused on tying like observations and RFIs to specific images in the field and geolocate them on the plans.
Oh, cool.
That is really helpful, especially as we expand. PMs and project executives in the office can walk through a job and see supers, RFIs, and questions, or add them to field questions and make those observations remotely. And that definitely makes us a lot more efficient. That has some AI built into it in terms of, defining percent complete and tracking the job and giving you an idea of is your schedule assessment accurate? But it's still early stage. As far as like AI utilization, ChatGPT and the like are great. Happy to let people use it, but I am not a fan of the, hey, write this email, copy, paste out the door.
You can tell.
You can tell, especially if it's just a huge change in the way that person communicates. Two, I think it's really important that you're putting your thought into how you want things framed, right? It's okay to get something polished or, ask for advice on things, have it do analysis for you from a numerical perspective. But I don't want to lose the value of like the individual thought process. These are designed to, these large language models are designed to work around what people have already thought about, not what they're going to think, right? They're not developing new ideas. They're not innovating. They're giving you access to what's already there. I don't want people to shut off like that creative side of the brain in exchange for speed and efficiency. So I think there's a balance, and I haven't really put a lot of time and effort into talking to the team about how I want them to use it, but it's definitely a conversation down the road that we're going to have at a leadership level.
As we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to tell the listeners that we haven't talked about? And I have one more thing that I'm going to throw in, a challenge.
No, I don't think there's anything else that's really groundbreaking. I think you guys did a pretty good job of covering the questions.
So the challenge is not a fight. I'm not going to fight you, even though I probably could win.
Yeah, you probably could, because I'm actually a big softie.
Yeah, right. You and I were golfing one day, and I made an offhanded suggestion, and I'd like to commit to it at some point, is that if we can win a project together, a nice chunky project, that we do some staff exchange. I would love to have some of your project management, some of your internal folks come and work at Mancini for a portion of that project. And then I would love to have some of the Mancini folks go and be in the field and help build something together with you.
I think that's a great idea. And I don't know that it needs to necessarily wait. We have projects all the time that even if we weren't doing them together, we could talk about what staff we each have available and what skill sets we want to kind of, align with the field or align with design or align with office. And we could get this started right away. I think that's a fantastic idea.
This comes up a lot, right? The questions I asked in the beginning of, don't you think architects need to have field experience? And everybody agrees, so do I. Like, let's just do it. Let's actually do it.
And actually, now that we're talking, something's coming up in terms of what I would add. I think you guys do a good job of this, but it's, person to person, your world and mine. And we were talking about this with change orders before, right? Or add service requests or work authorizations, whatever, you'll call it. I think a lot of times we get stuck in like, well, my scope is when you have the ability and the aptitude to go beyond your scope and challenge things and push boundaries. I'd like to see our review, which is, hey, how have you gone outside of your responsibilities and how has that either hurt or helped you, your team, or a project? We've run into this before where we're on a project and, the client's project manager was like, well, do we need this? What's zoning say? Oh, we're probably gonna have to go to the board. And I was on a call with like 30 people and I'm watching everyone's money fly out the window. And I finally said, did anyone actually review the zoning directly? And like, well, we don't have a land use attorney on board right now. And we then realized, actually, we don't need this whole extra process that was going to take all this time and money because we can do it through this application under accessory structure and, accessory use to the principal use, right?
Happens a lot.
And just like you're talking about getting an architect in the field with dirty boots and you want to get a super in the office to say, hey, this is what it really looks like to try to design something. It's not their job, but it would be really helpful for them to sharpen the axe.
Eric, thank you so much for being my guest on the Anti-Architect podcast and being honestly a great partner to our firm. It's been great growing both of our businesses together. I really mean that. It's been a lot of fun.
Likewise, man. It's awesome seeing the success and the acquisitions you guys are making and the growth. I'm really happy for you.
You too. So to read and see more about Eric, you can visit gwgllc.com, and you can also find him on LinkedIn.